so her butt and her waist are right here beside my knees.
Who knew you were going to get a demonstration?
Yeah, well, it's important because it's whatever. Here.
Yeah. Hi guys, and welcome back to our second recording of our birth story. You wouldn't have known that if I hadn't said that. But this is our second time trying to film this video. And I feel like we've got it on lockdown now and we're ready. We did it the first time. We were kind of like...
Why do you feel like we're ready?
Well, now we have questions from people. We've had a little more time to simmer. Don't you feel a little more prepared now? Like we're okay, we're a little clearer?
Well, we didn't
prep at all.
We didn't prep or recap the story together before we turned the camera on.
We just kind of went freestyle.
And we didn't do that again this time.
Yeah.
So
this time we're a little more prepared. We wanted to do this, I think, also maybe kind of obvious because I feel like even when you have a birth vlog, afterwards, like you still don't get to hear, like, I don't know, don't get to see what's going on in people's minds during the birth. And in our case, like I mentioned in the birth vlog, we actually did not film the whole thing. Like we really only filmed, I guess you would say, active labor, like the last hour and a half maybe. And I was only in labor for 5 hours total, which is very exciting to be able to say that. But I think that we only got filmed, like somewhere within the last hour and a half. And a lot happened before that. And through the comments on that video and then on Instagram, I've gotten a lot of questions about the birth. And so we're going to talk through the birth right now. Because some of the stuff you guys said, I was like, I didn't even think about that. Like once we had already filmed the birth story, like I said. So
in that regard, we are a little more prepared.
See, look at that. More prepared. Let's start with that day because this was basically labor kind of started to go into happening on Friday, April 19th.
You're like, where were you? You were in the 40 week.
I was about to hit 41 on Tuesday if I hadn't gone into labor.
So you were almost at 41 weeks. So it was really kind of like...
We're like overtime. Waiting. Yeah, overtime. Yeah. Especially considering that when I had Logan, to those of you that don't know, I had Logan basically at 38 weeks. It was like 37 weeks, 6 days. So at this point, we were already 2.5 weeks over where I had delivered Logan. Supposedly. You guys know I'm not like the hugest fan of like the phrasing due date, not only because I think everybody kind of bakes at a different length, but also because in our case, we weren't 100% sure as to like when conception actually happened, but we were feeling the pressure because in the state of Idaho, you're not technically allowed to have a home birth with a midwife after 42 weeks. So I had already felt for weeks leading up to that point, like, nope, we're still waiting. So it was kind of making us all a little bit nervous that I knew like this baby's not coming yet. And she just kept staying and staying. It was like, whoa, usually they say that wherever you have like your first child in the timeline of like how many weeks you are, you're going to be going around that same time. Now, I don't necessarily think that's true once again. And I've talked to a bunch of you guys. Yeah, it's not true. But we were a little bit freaked out. Like, okay, let's get this show on the road. So
I feel like everything you hear, it's like general or the average. It's like there is no average. The average is kind of whatever you get.
Yeah, there's a range there, and
there's a wide range.
Yeah,
wide.
And we became convinced because of this kind of like a little bit of paranoia or just being a little bit worried. Because of that, I started doing more research on due dates. Anyways, that's a whole separate thing where we kind of came to the conclusion through the study that due dates were based on that women actually will go anywhere between like 38 and 44 weeks. Like there's a very wide range according to the study that due dates were based on. I feel like I'm already getting off on a tangent and we haven't even started yet. But yes, a range. So it's Friday, my 40th week. We're going into the 41st and we're a little worried. So I decided to kind of turn up the volume on some of the intentional labor things that I was doing. For example, I think I walked around our neighborhood 4 times that day. Yeah. I drank like 3 glasses of my red raspberry leaf tea with like the nettles, basically the tea that's supposed to like prepare you for labor. I had like 6 dates that day, like my stuffed dates. I was doing a bunch of squats. I was doing all of the things, not to induce labor, because at least at this point in my life, I don't really believe in inducing labor. I think that you should just kind of like encourage it and baby will, hopefully come when they're supposed to come. But I did all of the things. So Friday, walking, dates, sipping, all of that. Friday night, it's dinner time. It's about time to put Logie to bed. And right before Logie was getting in the shower at around 7:30, I went to the bathroom and I wiped and flashed back to my birth with Logan, except it was only at 7:30 at night, which was so exciting. I had bloody show, which basically just means you wipe and there's blood.
Wasn't there a little more than that?
It was a little more than just a little blood.
It
was a good amount of blood.
A good amount of mucus. Right?
That's what you mean. Yes, yeah. That's exactly it. There was actually mucus before there was blood. I totally forgot about this. I wiped and I was like, Dan, that means that's my mucus plug. And then I kept wiping and then a little more blood started coming out. And I was like, okay, it's go time. This is exactly like with Logan.
So with Logan, when I woke up and you're like, this is happening today, my first thought and feeling was, no, it's not. I'm not ready. But this time, we were waiting around for it to happen. So last time it all began like in the middle of the night. Mm-hmm. So this time
at around 1:30 in the morning.
Starting earlier, so we were just waiting for it to happen. So I was like, okay, finally, it's happening tonight or tomorrow, whatever.
Yeah. The more I wiped, the more obvious it became. Like, this is really happening. Right. This isn't just like a one wipe and like, oh, I'm dry again.
I was ready.
It's going down. He was ready, guys. And I was actually very excited when women talk about this in their birth videos. I didn't really relate that feeling of like, it's labor time. I'm so excited. But this time I did feel that little twinge of excitement. And mostly it was because it happened so early. That I had some pretty specific prayer requests for this birth. He's looking because we're wondering if she's waking up. We're hearing a little bit a little like from the distance. But you guys probably know, I probably have vocalized this to you, that my main prayer requests for this birth were as follows. One, for it to be during awake hours. Like in my imaginary daydream, it was like I would wake up, eat a really big breakfast, and then be like, ooh, I'm contracting, and then go into labor. But this was honestly second place, or just as good. Like it was still exactly what I wanted, which was awake hours. I wanted to go into labor when it wasn't the middle of the night and the whole world was asleep, including my husband, which wasn't probably going to happen even if it was the middle of the night again, because you guys know last time it was a weird fluke thing of like he was sick and had NyQuil in him. And then on top of that, I didn't try too hard to wake Dan up, which we'll talk about this in the story. But the reason I didn't was because I was really convinced, like, what's he going to do for me? Like, I'm the one giving birth. Like, suck it up, Nikki. Like, the journey begins now. Like, it was very serious for me. But this time, so not only did we start way early, which was great. Logan took his shower, and then before he went to bed, before Dan put him to sleep, Logan actually laid in bed with me and worked through a couple contractions, like maybe 2 or 3 contractions we did together. Logan was just face to face with me, and we were lying sideways and going, like doing our breaths. In for, what was it? I've already forgotten, like in for 4, out for 7. Mm-hmm. I think that was the count. And that ties into one of the questions someone asked and why this whole birth was so different. But yeah, so Logan did a couple of breaths with me. Dan brought him to sleep. And then when Dan came back out, I was still just contracting and hurting.
But at that point, that's when I started filling up the tub. Because before I put Logan to bed, I had already pre-filled the thing up with air, and I was waiting for us in the other room. So I pulled that out, brought it into the bedroom, and so when I came back out from putting Logan to sleep, that's when I started filling it up.
So like I mentioned, I did get that twinge of excitement at the beginning that everybody talks about, but because I've heard everybody talk about this exciting feeling and I didn't know what was coming, I really was like, just lay low, Nikki. So like I was laying in bed and just trying to like keep it chill with the mindset of like, this could be 1 to 3 days. Like who knows, right? You don't know what you're going into with labor. Also, we felt like maybe we should eat something. So I think at that point when you came out, so the tub was being filled and Dan made us some food. He threw a pizza in the oven, heated up some chicken tenders, and I was just kind of walking around dealing with my contractions. Now, this is one of the biggest differences also between my birth with Logan and my birth with Lizzie this time. I worked with a pelvic floor therapist going into this birth. Now, the reason I worked with her was because we are very confident, based on how everything felt, Lizzie was breech at around 36 weeks. And that freaked me out too, because also technically you're not allowed to do a home birth in Idaho when your baby is breech, or if they know about it ahead of time. And we knew, okay, baby's breech. So I met with a pelvic floor therapist, and she worked with me. And after just like a few days of exercises, baby flipped. And it was very noticeable because I went from feeling like I was having kicks in my butthole to like, oh, now I can feel the movement more up here.
Well, it was where you felt the hiccups.
That
it was like
too.
the main giveaway.
Yes.
And it was
on my butthole.
Noticeable the next day after waking up, a night after doing all those exercises while you're upside down and stuff.
Yeah, he would get me upside down, shake my butt, like do all the spinning babies moves. I think it was about 3 days of doing those exercises before baby flipped. Yeah. Either way, I had also learned from my pelvic floor therapist more about breathing in labor. And this was such a, like, I don't like the phrase game changing, but this was literally game changing. The reason it was game changing was because I was under the impression going into my birth with Logan that when people are like, do these breathing exercises, that it was like all mental, like just breathe. And I'm like, I'm giving birth, like I'm trying to breathe. But my pelvic floor therapist was the one who actually made me realize, like brought it to my attention, that it's not just, oh, breathe, relax, that it's the breath work that you do is literally like, have you guys ever woken up where you're going to get like a Charlie horse in your calf in the middle of the night and you can kind of stop it by flexing your foot back? So like the counter pressure of the foot being flexed can stop the contraction. She basically said it's kind of like that. If you use your breath in the correct way and send your air to the right place and use your muscles in the right way, you can really counter the pain that comes with the contraction through your breath work. Basically, what she kind of walked me through with this breathing was like, you're not just breathing, you're like sending the air down to your uterus. And it might be like, how do you send the air down to your uterus? It's literally the way you're manipulating your muscles. So by breathing in, it's like I was breathing and filling up my uterus with air for 4 seconds, so it's really expanding it. So doing the opposite of a contraction. And then when I'm letting the air out, I'm letting it out for 7 seconds, and I'm picturing my uterus completely melting to the ground.
It's what you're thinking you're trying to do, right?
Yeah, but I'm actually doing it. Like if you stand here right now and you can just breathe, or you can breathe and try to fill your stomach out, like manipulate your muscles to go out. That's what I was doing. I was manipulating my muscles in my uterus to fill up and go out, which is the opposite of what it's trying to do, and then just trying to relax it as much as possible, which is also the opposite of what it's trying to do. I just got chills thinking about it. The hugest difference, it was so much more manageable. Like honestly, another spoiler alert, 5-hour labor, I'd say 3.5 hours, maybe even 4 hours of the 5 labors it was very manageable. Like, I just got chills again thinking about that.
Well,
was it super comfy?
I remember, just not seeing that much discomfort in your face, just hearing the sounds you were making. You're just on your bed or on the toilet, just closing your eyes and just breathing. So every time I heard her exhale, like, sorry, not whistling, but I just knew she's having another right contraction. That's why she didn't answer me.
Yes.
Or whatever. So.
Yes, and in that sense, like the whole idea I had originally of like, no one can do my labor for me. Like, this is my birth. No one can help me. In some ways, that is kind of true. Like, it really was like, I'm the one that's breathing. I'm the one that, like, I can't freak out and look outward for help because he, in some ways, which we'll get to this, he can't do anything for me. Like, I'm the one that has to ride through the contraction. And it was totally, that's the biggest word I would use, manageable. So you might be like, well, what was that 3.5 hour range, 4 hour range? Like we said, it was in the beginning when Logan was taking his shower, when he brought Logan to bed, then when he got up, filled up the tub, and we started kind of pacing the kitchen because he was making the pizza and the chicken tenders.
She said at one point, having contractions on the toilet felt comfortable.
Yes.
So then I made the food, and then I guess at that point you started texting.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Well, I want to back up there about the toilet. The whole reason I labored on the toilet was because, and this is something people ask, like preparing your mindset for birth. I watched a lot of birth videos, and I talked to a lot of women leading into birth, including like my pelvic floor therapist and my chiropractor and my midwife. And I had a doula who is like one of the sweetest people ever and was really, just helpful for me through the whole process. I actually never understood the purpose of a doula until this pregnancy. My doula just helped me so much in so many ways. I'm planning on interviewing her at some point because I think that it'll help open people's eyes to kind of what a doula can do. But she had said in her birth that laboring on the toilet was like really great. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to give this a go. And so, I was laboring on the toilet, and walking around the kitchen as he's making the food. And at some point I went in the bathroom and I'm standing in the mirror and I pushed on my hips during a contraction. And all of a sudden I was like, whoa, that was way better, like pushing on my own hips. And then it all came back to me that we had been prepping leading into this for Dan to do these hip squeezes. And he had already done at this point, we had already tried the Rebozo, which is in the birth vlog. And that was like, okay. I mentioned it felt a little gymnastic-y, like for being in labor. Like I gotta get all set up or whatever. It felt okay. But once I squeezed my hips, I was like, we're going to do that. And so after that point, every time I had a contraction, I had Dan come over and squeeze my hips. So
it would be kind of difficult to just go and squeeze her hips for a minute?
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So let me just demonstrate here.
You got a
demonstration. Because it was very easy. If you stand over her, she's like on her hands and knees, and you stand over her. So her butt and her waist are right here beside my knees.
Who knew you were going to get a demonstration?
Yeah, well, it's important because it's whatever. Here.
Yeah.
I grab her hips with my hands and I squeeze with my legs. And just a little with my arms, but you kind of squeeze like that, and it makes it more doable. Very easy. It's very easy to put as much pressure as you need and keep it there for a minute or a minute and a half. If you're just trying with your
arms, you're going to tire out.
Yeah, so do it the easy way.
Yeah, the easy way.
Because you're going to have to do it every 2 minutes. So that way you do not get tired at all.
Yes, and that is a really good thing to know, because exactly, it could be hours. And take it from me, once he started, I never wanted him to miss a single contraction. Like once I figured out how much that helped, every time I was contracting, it was like, get back over here, you got to do this. Mm-hmm. And I would almost get angry if he wasn't there in time. It's like, hurry, because it made such a difference, which, like I kind of alluded to before, that was an area that showed me that my whole thought process of like, what can anyone else do for me? Like, I'm the one that's giving birth, was not correct. It turns out other people can in fact do some things for you. And the other reason I remembered that was not only pushing on myself, but like a day or two earlier, I had been at a friend's house and she did 2 births in the hospital and 1 birth at a birth center with midwives. And she had told me how much more amazing her birth at the birth center with the midwives was because of the things that they were able to do for her, including pushing her hips and getting her in different positions. And so I was like, really? That's made that big of a difference? And she was like, unbelievable difference. So it all kind of was coming to me in labor. And I will say also, we had written a little cheat sheet and put it up on the fridge, or I had written a little cheat sheet so that me and Dan wouldn't forget once I was in labor, all the things that we needed to do kind of right away, including like filling the tub, offering me like easy sugary snacks like a spoonful of honey or orange slices, offering me sips of water, because I had forgotten that looking back at my birth with Logan, I did not drink any water for like 9 hours. And that's why I think it's in the birth vlog. At the end, when I finally got water, I literally drank 3 hydro flasks full in like 5 minutes. They were like, what? And they just kept offering them to me. And so it's fine. It's just, I noted like, okay, we got to remember to give me like sips. So in the kitchen, still squeezing my hips, making food. And at this point, I think I made my way back to the bathroom. And was this when things were starting to get closer? Had I even gone in the tub at all at this point?
No, you didn't want to get in the tub. So I'd filled it up. You take the shower head off, and you connect your hose to it. So that's how you get the hot water in. It's supposed to be right at 100 degrees, and it was at like 106, 107. So we were waiting for it to cool down. I was putting some cold water in there and trying to get it right at 100.
And you underfilled it so that if it ended up being cool, you could keep adding hot water to let it fill up.
Right, and you didn't want to get in the bathtub or the birth pool because you didn't want to get stuck in there.
Yeah, I don't know. It was weird. I got scared suddenly.
And then you're like, oh, I'm going to get in the shower. But I'm going to have to disconnect and connect. And then you're going to get stuck in the shower. Like,
yeah, he was the one that eventually was like, just go in. Just consider it a test run. I don't know what it was, guys. I was literally freaked out to get in. I don't know if it's because I knew it was go time. I don't know if I thought I was going to make a mess, but I was scared.
I think right before this is when you were texting.
On the toilet. Okay, yes. So I had been texting my doula earlier, who it turned out she was out of town, which was fine. If you guys don't know this, the whole birth from the very beginning, I had been debating doing a free birth. Like, not seriously debating it because we didn't do it. And I was like, I can't do this. But I had been debating it. Clearly, it's just part of my personality to be like, let me just birth. Nobody can help me, which, like I said, turned out to be wrong. But I texted my doula. She's like, I'm not even in town right now, but I can talk you through whatever. She's like, you've got this. She was just so encouraging to me. And we're timing contractions. I'm on the toilet. And then I thought, you know what? Something in me was like, you just need to let your midwife know now. Like, and I had been waiting, and I have this tendency, I did this with Logan too, to kind of wait till the last minute. But I just felt like it's time. I just need to give her a heads up.
But things like hadn't really been...
It hadn't been very long.
Yeah, so we didn't know when the last minute was.
No.
And we weren't trying to do that either.
No, I mean, maybe a little bit.
It just turned out that way.
Yeah, exactly. We weren't actively trying to avoid having her come. But at the same time, I had this whole thought, the whole time of like, I just want to do my thing and not really be disturbed at all. Just want to birth alone or like labor alone. But I thought, okay, I need to give Rebecca a heads up. So I texted her, and I think I said something along the lines of like, I think I'm having contractions pretty regularly now. She's all, how frequently? And I was like, maybe every like 3 minutes or something like that. And she's like, that sounds pretty legit to me. Like, and so she called. And at this point, I was actually on the toilet laboring. And right when she called, she's like, guys, like, I'm kind of thinking maybe I should head over. And I was like, maybe. I don't really know if it's like really happening, but maybe. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, wait a minute. And then I just started puking. And it was different than my hyperemesis that I dealt with the entire pregnancy.
But she was puking for like a minute and a half, and she's just
on
the other line.
speakerphone.
And then as soon as she was done, she's like, I'm going to come over now. And I'm like, okay, come on, let's go.
Yeah, because she was about an hour away. So she the midwife that we used is actually dual licensed in Washington and Idaho. And the reason that we did that was because Idaho has more stringent birthing laws than Washington does, which is a little super annoying. But we were like, okay, we don't know what this birth's going to hold. We want the ability to just go right over the border if we need to, if we want to, and birth over there. So, which was like the last thing in the world that I wanted to do. I just wanted to birth at home. But like I said, they have weird laws and we just didn't know what was in front of us. So she was an hour away, and good thing she left at that time too, because she barely made it, spoiler alert. But
yeah, there's no reason for you to not come at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she hops in the car, and we just keep laboring. Now, at this point, I'm pretty sure once I was done throwing up, that is the point where it was like...
You didn't throw up again after that?
Nope. It was just that one time.
But she threw up everything that she had. It was everything.
And this is what happened when I was giving birth to Logan, too. It's very common, I guess, for women to puke during transition, which that's what my midwife said. She goes, yeah, it sounds like you're in transition. I'm going to come now. And we're like, okay, see you soon. But yeah, I puked everything up. And then Dan was like, hey, why don't you get in the tub now? Like, practice round. Like, go on, get in. There's no reason not to. And I was like, okay. So I climbed in the tub instantly. I was like, oh man, this was an incredible decision. Not only just to get in the tub, but to have the tub, because I've wondered for a long time, just like how I would say, like, what is anyone else going to do to help me? I also kind of wondered if the tub would really be as helpful as I imagined, or if it was me just fantasizing, like, I don't know, I've seen all these births on Instagram, and it's like, I want the tub, and it's like, Nikki, you don't need the tub, like, you're fine. But let me tell you, it turns out it was just like it wasn't a fantasy. It was just like my fantasy. Being in the tub was so much easier.
Well, before you had the tub, and it was hard and narrow at the bottom.
Yeah, so I had to just stay there.
Is wider. You have an infinite amount of body positions, possibilities, and it was soft, and warm.
It was so
the water level
instantly.
is much higher.
Yes, instantly. I'm
better.
covered, I'm warm, I'm cozy, I'm able to like move around, and just like you would see on Instagram or in videos, I was able to hang over the edge of the pool, and it supported me perfectly because the pool is full of water. So I don't know, I had thought when I saw it blown up, like I'm gonna lean over the edge and the whole thing's gonna collapse or something. And Dan said to me, like, no, it's gonna be full of water, you'll be fine. But once I did it, I was like, oh my gosh, he's totally right. Like, I could put 100% of my weight forward, and it was like leaning on a pillow because it was so soft, but it was like the sturdiest pillow in the world because it wasn't gonna go anywhere because of all the water. It was literally amazing. And Dan also put the tub on some blankets that we had, so the bottom was just like extra cushy and cozy.
Is inflatable, but yeah, it was on a blanket.
Extra supported because we have a wood floor, and he just thought, like, I don't think it's going to be as soft and cozy. And so he had brought that up to our midwife, and she was like, that's a good idea. That will definitely help. And it felt amazing. So I just continued to have contractions. We kept the timer and the water and the honey next to like my little bedside table that was scooched up next to the pool. He crawled in the tub with me, and every time I had a contraction, did the pressing on the hip.
I remember only giving you 2 spoonfuls of honey.
I think so. And it was near the end. And I think it was helpful. I'm convinced that that's actually like a helpful thing to do in labor because it's just straight up energy, like just going straight to you. Okay, so he kept guiding me through every contraction. And at this point, they really were 2 minutes apart or less sometimes. And so he couldn't really go anywhere because I was like a crazy person. Like,
we were
no,
tracking
you gotta squeeze it
on the app.
And some women I know hate tracking contractions. Like they won't track it at all because it frustrates them or it makes them feel really like just annoyed. I guess it's the same as frustrated. I am the opposite. At least I have been both births. Tracking my contractions gives me something to feel in control of. Like I like just doing it. Plus I don't really tend to trust myself the most. Like that was the thing. Like even in Rebecca not coming, it really wasn't fully trying to push her off to the last minute. He's tending to baby. It really wasn't us just pushing her off to the last minute. It's also partially me like not trusting myself and really genuinely not knowing if like, is it go time? Is it now? Ginger peach iced tea. Really yummy from a place called Tear if you're ever in North Idaho. So yeah, we're just continuing to go every 2 minutes. Like I said, he could not leave. He had to be in the tub with me. At around 11:45, maybe 11:50-ish on Friday night, our midwife showed up. And at this point, this is in the video where I'm like literally screaming out to Jesus like every other 10 seconds or whatever. And keep in mind, that was really purposeful. I actually went into this birth thinking like, I want to low-key be like praying the whole time. And I'm going to call out to Jesus like every time I feel like I need his help and his strength. And I just went in knowing that. And part of that was because looking at my birth with Logan, it's very, very noticeable if you watch the vlog that right when I call out to Jesus is when Logan comes out. And so it's not to be superstitious. It's not like that, but it really is like, okay, I'm going to be praying and connecting with the Lord, and I want to let him know that I need his help. And so this time, called out the whole time, but at this point in the birth, I'm like screaming, like, Jesus, help me. But I just was shouting. I mean, it's better than my shouting with Logan. I was shouting a lot more with Logan.
Yeah, I was on a different level with Logan.
Yeah, that video is, they're both edited, but that video is more highly edited because even though I left it in to be raw and real, I didn't leave in all of the parts because I was going a little bit extra crazy at certain points. There were some swear words flying out. And I didn't want that this time. That was the other reason I wanted to call to Jesus, because I was like, dude, I don't want to be screaming profanities as my baby comes out. I'd rather be screaming to my Savior and asking him for help. You know what I mean? And that's the thing, is like, even if you can't tell by watching the video, but maybe you can, but both of us are in agreement that like I was way calmer this time. I mean, right? Like, yeah, way calmer. So midwife shows up like 11:45, 11:50, and she wanted to check baby's heartbeat with the Doppler. And I kind of freaked out. Like, she put the Doppler down there and I started hearing the machine, and it was just too loud and it was frustrating me. And I was like, no, get it off of me. And, you know, she's like, I need to check the heartbeat. Like, that's what's responsible, is to check. And I basically was like, I don't care. Don't touch me. I'm having a contraction. And I just started having another contraction. That's the thing. At this point, the contractions started becoming like on top of each other. And so she did actually end up listening to the heartbeat, because I was so...
She just turned the volume way down. Because I would suspect if she comes and puts that on, you are going to feel comfortable hearing the sound of your baby and all that. But you didn't want to hear any of that. It was too loud.
It was too loud.
Yeah.
It was too annoying. And so she did. She ended up turning it way down and checking briefly, I think. But at this point, I mean, I'm having the fetal ejection response, which someone did not ask in the Instagram comment, or in the little question box, but someone did say this in my comment section. They were like, Nikki, I'm so confused. It looks like you didn't even push. And I've only ever seen births where they're like, okay, 1, 2, 3, push, like push. And that is because you are correct. I did not push. And thinking about it, actually, I know this sounds really dumb, guys, but you got to remember, like, birth is crazy and I'm only a month out. Flashing back, I totally forgot I did push with Logan. Like, Jen had me do some pushing. And I'm like a couple. Yeah. Now, granted, as I'm thinking about this, my pushing with Logan wasn't really pushing in the sense that I now recognize that all it really was working past that feeling that I had, same thing this time, of like, I don't want to rip, and so I'm holding on. So now I can recognize, looking back, oh, those weren't even necessarily pushes with Logan. It was just like, stop holding on so tight. And this time, it was kind of the same thing, except I really didn't have to push at all. I basically just kept saying, like, I feel like my vag is gonna tear. Like, I don't want her to tear I didn't know it was a she. Didn't know she was a she. I don't want my vagina to tear. And both of them.
Or I feel like I'm gonna poop. And we're like, yeah, just poop then.
Just do it.
It's a baby.
Yeah. And I just decided in that moment, hearing both Dan and Rebecca tell me, like, it's okay, let the baby come, let the baby come out. Yeah, I had just decided in that moment, since both of them were like, it's the baby, just let the baby come out, I decided to just stop resisting it. And I was like, all right. And it wasn't a 100% stopping of resistance, because as she was coming out, like literally gophering out, I was like, and kind of like had her come back in. We have a very special guest. A very special guest. Oh, a little burp. It was weird though, because it was like still not a 100% situation where I just let her fly out. I was still kind of holding on. Now, granted, I think that reflex that I have to do that is kind of partially a protective reflex to not tear, because another spoiler alert, I didn't tear at all, which means I've now gone 2 births without tearing at all.
Yeah, you're just stretching and waking up from your nap.
Yeah, so part of that definitely feels like a protective mechanism, because that may not be why, because I will say my mom never tore either. So I do think some of it is genetic, just like how my mom never got stretch marks and I never got stretch marks. So I think that some of it is just our genetic flexible skin. But what was weird was, like I said, it felt like I was pulling her back in, like I wasn't quite ready. And they just kept reassuring me. They kept going, no, just let her come. Like, she's coming. It's not a poop. It's your baby. It's okay. And I just was like, just let her go. And it was just a really crazy feeling. Now, something else that I did different this time that I decided going into birth I wanted to do differently was I wanted to feel what was going on with my own hands. I was too scared to even touch myself last time. Like, not only did my previous midwife in Nashville, Jen, have to help me a little bit, like, hey, she's coming out, can I help you? And kind of like took her fingers around my vagina and kind of moved the lip over a little bit, and then Logie came flying out. So I was like, I could do that. But also I wanted to feel what was going on. So while I was in the bath, I like stuck my fingers up to do my own like cervical check. Now, I don't really know what I was feeling for because I don't know how to properly do a cervical check, but I was just trying to feel if anything felt different. And I'll tell you what, it did. Like, it didn't feel different until it did feel different. And basically what I mean by that was I couldn't tell. Every time I would check, I'm like, nothing's happening. Nothing's going on, Dan. Like, they're not coming. And then, and I think that speaks to my inexperience. I think probably there was something changing, but it wasn't noticeable enough until she started busting out. And basically I stuck my hand in and I was like, whoa, I feel a bulge. And then all of a sudden, and I say this in the vlog, and this was right after our midwife had gotten there, right after Rebecca had shown up, I put my hand down there and I'm like, oh, it's feeling different now. And then very distinctly, it was like, pop. And I knew that was my water. My water just popped. And he swears he felt like he could feel it or hear it or something. But I think
that was just in my head.
I think it was in your head.
I felt
probably me jumping.
Yeah, I felt something, and I knew it couldn't have been the water, but it was probably so startling to you. It was like, wait, what was that?
It was so startling. Something. Yes, to feel it like happen in my hand, like at that exact moment, was super crazy because I didn't make it happen. I didn't pop it. I just happened to touch myself right when it exploded in my hand. And once again, just like me saying, like, baby's coming, I don't and so, by the way, I realized we just jumped around here because the water definitely broke before baby's head came out. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of hopping around. But even that, like, my midwife, she was like, that's good. That's great. That's what's supposed to happen. And I'm just like, ah! But yeah, so it popped.
You were like, nothing's happening, or I don't feel her. I don't know what I'm feeling. And
yes.
She was back there with her light in the mirror. She's like, no, that's definitely a head.
Yes, because after it popped, that's when things started changing. That's when her head started coming out. But I didn't recognize it as a head because it was so soft. And so that's when I was like, is that a head? Like, I could feel stuff's happening. To be honest, I actually thought at first, oh no, she's still breech, or they're still breech, because it was so soft. I thought it was their butt. Like, and I had to tell myself in the moment, it's okay. Like, she's trained for this, because she has training in delivering babies breech. But I had thought for sure she had flipped around because of what we had felt. So I was telling myself, it's okay, it's okay. So Rebecca goes to the back with the flashlight. You can see that in the vlog. And that's when, and she told me later, she was thinking the same thing. Like, oh no, this baby's breech. Like, and she, you know, she would have been okay with it because she trained for it, like I said. But actually, ironic, her and my doula had taken the same breech delivery training together just like a couple of months earlier. So I just thought, hey, you know, maybe the training is going to come in handy now. Like, stay calm. But she looked with her light, and then she was like, no, that's a head. And so that was a little reassuring to know there was a head coming.
One of the contractions, the tone of voice changed.
Yep.
She's like, this baby's out of me. And so I look over and I just see like arms and hands
Dude, it was
in the water.
so crazy.
And yeah, you were in an awkward
heart hunched over, and I'm like,
position.
Ah! Yeah. Baby's out. My baby's out of me. Just like you said, I like knew they're out. And we both looked, and I know we both saw the exact same thing in that split second, which was baby looking like a shadowy figure in like half bloody water, just literally arms, like the startle reflex, like the newborn startle reflex. She just like opened up like a starfish.
I did not see her or look at her when she was in the water. I wish I did, but she was still under you, so I couldn't see, and that's when Rebecca came and got her and put her on top of you while you spun around.
Yes, you both kind of had me, which I wasn't even in my body for this because I don't actually have a physical memory of doing this, but it's on camera. We did it. where basically him and Rebecca maneuvered me around, because obviously the cord is still hooked up in through the placenta, and they had me like crawl over and swooped her up and then placed her right on my chest. And I was super freaked out, just like last time, like very much in shock. And also, and this is something we'll talk about at some point in a video down the line, between my hyperemesis, you know, I was so sick for 9 months. And, you know, she had never had a client that had been sick like that the entire time. I had also, we think, gotten like COVID or some cold at the end where I couldn't eat for a week. And there were just some things that had us worried because of all of that. And fundal height measurement was measuring behind, which it turns out she was just sitting lower in me, and that was part of it. But we really didn't know. And so on top of the fact that clearly shock is like my go-to birth facial expression and emotion, on top of that, I mean, I was just genuinely scared. Like, is my baby okay? We really didn't know. And we were following our guts through the whole process and doing what we felt like was right for the baby, for me, for our birth, what we felt like God had for us. But we didn't know. I mean, and we had opted out of pretty much all testing, all ultrasounds. And so I'm just kind of beating that point home that we really didn't know. And so that was also part of my shock in the vlog when I'm like, are they okay? Is my baby okay? Like, and once we found out she was a girl, which I guess that's the next part in this, it took us a minute, because I think you were kind of in the same place as me, like just kind of shocked, like, oh my gosh, baby's out. Like you didn't already right. So fast. And just everything we had got, it was just so intense and fast.
I noticed that, you know, she'd been baking inside of you. Was it
like 3 weeks longer
than Logan? So she was able to lift her head right away. And that was shocking because this kid had zero neck muscles when he was born.
And he was screaming, and she was not screaming. So it was a different situation. She literally, that was part of the thing too of me being like, is she okay? Because she was just like, yeah, like on my chest. And my midwife is like, yeah, she's got good color, good tone. And she just kept telling me she's a water baby. Water babies are chill, which I was like, okay, because she was so much more chill. I was more chill too, even though that, you know, like we said, maybe doesn't seem like it, but I've heard that can even affect how the baby comes out, you know, like.
And then 5 minutes later, Logan woke up and he came in the room.
Literally 5 minutes later.
He had just missed it.
Literally, like he got to watch the placenta be birthed, because he just came in like 5 minutes later, and
we did not show the placenta, but it was not
the same.
It was not even close to the same size as Logan's was.
Significantly smaller.
His must have been giant.
Dude.
Hers was much smaller, but she was only 4 ounces lighter than he was.
Yeah.
And
which was also a surprise.
Right.
Because since my fundal height had been measuring, I think at the end I was measuring 6 weeks behind. It was surprising to see like, basically almost the same size as Logan, like not even a small baby. Like, you know, she wasn't a big baby. My friend had her baby a week before I had Lizzie, and her baby was like 9 pounds, you know, so she wasn't a big baby, but she wasn't a small baby either. 7 pounds, we think 7 pounds, 2 ounces. So, you know, she was an established little baby. And it was crazy because, so backing up after the minute of her being on my chest, that's when, you know, we were like, oh, what's the gender? And then that's when Dan looked and we found out she was a girl, and that was crazy. You probably saw it. I was in shock. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's pretty much it. I didn't tear.
That was at 12:08.
Yeah.
So
on April 20th.
Which day is going to be her birthday? Because it was right at the end there. So
yeah, and I praise the Lord, man. I didn't tear. I didn't hemorrhage. There was nothing. Like, it's amazing for how insanely difficult my pregnancy was. I'm not going to use the word easy, because birth is not easy and recovering from birth is not easy, but relatively it's all been pretty easy. Like the birth was so fast. The really, the main prayer request I had, like I had said, besides timing, like being shorter and being able to have it be during like normal hours, not in the middle of the night, was I didn't want to be terrified the whole time, because that's the thing with Logan's birth.
It was a big deal because you had such a hard pregnancy that, at least you got to have a relatively easy delivery.
Yes. And everybody kept saying that to me, like, oh, word on the street is that when you have a really hard pregnancy, you have an easy delivery. And I was like, don't even talk to me about that, because with my luck, I'm going to end up with some crazy botched C-section. Like, we can't. I'm just going and we'll see what happens. But everybody was right. It ended up being, like we just said, a pretty, like, idyllic birth in a lot of ways. Is it as idyllic as the woman on Instagram who's just like, and pulls her baby out and is like, oh, hi, baby, and is so calm? No, we don't know if my personality could ever do that anyways, though. But
yeah, but I feel like when you see those videos, maybe that person will have a different story to tell. Maybe a week or so after their birth. I have
heard that before.
Telling you what's going on in their head, even though it looked like not a big deal from the outside.
They're just not as expressive as me. Right. Really expressive. Yeah, I'm gonna open up the questions now because this has already gone really long, and this might help jar my memory for something else I was going to say.
We've already answered a couple questions, though.
This person asked where I felt my contractions, just in my uterus and a little bit in my back. But it was different than my back contractions with Logan, and I think it's because I was able to move in the tub and, like, get into different positions. Yeah, this person asked if I ended up tearing. No. Didn't really push, because she's asking on tips for pushing and not to tear. I told you, I think my top tip on not tearing is not rushing the exit
pushing
process.
is holding your breath, and then you're flexing your muscles, and so you're tightening everything. And so, have you ever been to the chiropractor? They don't tell you to hold your breath because it's not going to work or it's going to feel awful. You breathe out, and everything relaxes. So that's what the breath is doing.
And that is what I was doing for 4 hours leading up to
that. Whether you want to or not. Exactly. So the labor is. The contraction is squeezing your baby out. So if you breathe with it, your body's doing it, and you're not fighting it by clenching up and squeezing.
But it's true. It is true that relaxing, I think, really helps. Like I said, I didn't tear the first time, so it feels a little unfair. But we did a lot of those exercises. That's me doing perineum, whatever it's called, massages. We did that last time. We didn't do that at all this time. But I didn't do any of these breathing exercises last time. And you're totally right. I think the relaxing part of it is really, I think, what helps, because it's got to stretch really far. This is an interesting question. Did you feel more prepared this time around? What did you do different? No, I felt way less prepared this time around, especially in terms of practical things. Like, I did not do the same lead up with all of my teas and my dates and freezer meals. Like, we were not as, I know that's not has nothing to do with birth, but like, I didn't feel as prepared in that sense, like physically, but I did feel prepared in the sense that, like, I was looking at affirmation cards. Like, my friend actually made these Christian birth affirmation cards, and I was looking at them a lot in the 2 weeks leading up to birth.
There was a lot of mental preparation.
Yes. And then, like, the pelvic floor therapist, like I said, I think that was definitely insanely helpful. So, but yeah, it all felt I felt so much less prepared in general. Like, leading up to it, I just kept going like, okay, Lord, birth is natural. Birth is natural.
There were some things that we didn't have prepared. Like, when the baby popped out, Rebecca's like, where's the receiving blankets? And we're like, what? What are you talking about?
She's like, we talked about this. I'm like, oh, like Dan had to go, because we have a lot of storage underneath the house. He had to go underneath the house like 3 times the night we gave birth, because he had to just get different things that we were like, oh, we didn't get that out yet. Like, back under the house.
Birth pads.
Yes, right? Yes. Like, I didn't have the diaper for myself for the bleeding afterwards, but we had extra diapers under the house from my last birth, because a lot of our birth supplies,
forgot. We should have had that stuff. But
it just slipped our minds, and I was so sick until the end. So a lot of the preparation, have the stuff,
we just didn't have it out and ready.
Yes, a lot of it didn't happen because I was so sick. So I just wasn't as prepared. because I was so sick. But we had a lot of extra supplies from our birth with Logan, because when you buy those birth kits, they're usually like overabundantly like stuffed with extra things. And because I didn't bleed that much, I mean, honestly, I still have enough supplies for a third birth if we ended up having another birth, because I just didn't have to use all the like doggy pads and the diapers and everything.
How about the cleanup? How do you all drain the tub?
That's
so
right.
That part was easy because I didn't have to do it. But it's easy. The midwife had an assistant come, and
that's typically part of what you're like paying for in the home birth process.
So the same hose that is used to fill up the tub, you just hook it up to a pump, and it's pumped into the toilet, or it could go in the bathtub. Ours went into the toilet, and then they fold up the tub and throw away the liner. It's not a big deal, and you probably won't have to do it. So
yes,
it's easy.
Someone had asked me along those same lines, like what happens if you poop when you're in the tub? Well,
there was a little
pooper scooper
fishnet.
Yeah.
So if it comes out juicy, then it's just gonna be a cloudy view. But if it comes out in a chunk, then there's a fishnet. I mean, if it's included in your
it should be, because I think that's just part of it. But I pooped in my labor with Logan. I did not poop this time, and I'm convinced it's just because the whole thing was shorter and not in my poop window. Let's just be honest. Yeah. Like, at that point with Logan, we were in my poop window.
You lost all your food.
Yeah, that too, man. Okay, someone said, did you have any fears this time around that you didn't have during your first labor? So I've heard moms say this, and this is totally true. The first time around, you're scared because you've never done it before. And you're like, holy Toledo, what am I about to go into? The second time around, depending on how your first time went, you're scared to repeat what you did the first time. And even though in a lot of ways, my first birth, like for some women, that would be like a dream birth, just because no trauma, no tearing, like all the things I mentioned. But in other ways, I've told you now 12 times, or maybe not, I was terrified the entire time. It was like going through the scariest experience of my life for 11 hours straight. Like high adrenaline, just, oh my God, I'm terrified, like the whole time. And side note, that's not a side note, I should close this loop. This time, the amount of terror that I felt was so much less in terms of like how scared I was, but also the amount of time. Like I was really scared there at the end when she was coming out, but it's like, we're talking like 20 to 30 minutes of terror versus literally 10 or 11 hours of terror. So, I was very afraid of going through what I went through with Logan again. Like, oh man, that was hard. But I was also very afraid of it going worse. So the fact that it went so much better was such a gift and a blessing. But yeah, that's my answer to that. How did your birth plan play out? I guess perfectly, but our birth plan was so vague. It was just like, stay home and don't tear and stay chill and hopefully not have it be too long.
You plan for the best, and that's pretty vague.
Yeah, I didn't get too specific. Like I know some women get really specific about like their playlists, what they want read to them when, like we're going to do this, then you're going to read that to me, then I'm going to go here and do this exercise. I just wanted to go in with a bunch of tools at my disposal, like the different exercises and the birth cards, but I left it open because I don't know, this is possibly not true, just like how my idea around like what is anyone going to do to help me turned out to not be true. But in my head, I just felt going in like, I don't know how I'm going to feel, so how could I even plan this out? Like I can't. I might want one thing beforehand and then not want it once I'm in labor. So that's part of why I didn't get too detailed.
You know what to expect, and then you have no idea what to expect.
Exactly.
You know what to expect, but the unexpected can happen. That's a better way to put it. So I'm not feeling any of the labor pain, but I'm there available to do anything, right? So I was making food and then she threw up. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to eat all this food myself.
Oh.
So, her figuring out, holy crap, this pressure on my hips is what I need. So I was there.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and that leads to the question that someone asked about, where is this? How did Dan prepare to be your right-hand man during birth? Classes, podcasts, books. Okay.
Well, we went to like a full-on once a week class with the Midwife
in Nashville
company or group that we were doing with in Nashville. So we had experience doing that, and then there were a couple YouTube channels, Mama Natural, Bridget, I don't know what
I can't remember. Bridget Taylor.
Yeah. So, she's pulling up videos all the time, and I'm watching them with her.
That's what I was going to say. So it's not that Dan took some special, like, support class or, like, spent all his time watching videos. It's that Dan was very open and willing to learn. Yeah, he was down to learn. And so I was the one immersing myself in videos, books. That's pretty much what it was. It was videos, and podcasts, and anything that I felt like was relevant for him to watch, like, hey, you need to hear this or you need to know this. I would either tell him, like, hey, I just learned this information in this podcast, and I would like, or I'd be like, come here, come watch this, and he would come and watch it. So I was kind of the one like checking things out and then telling him when it was like, yeah, check this out, and he was always willing and down to like learn and check everything out. So I really do think that it's the moms, like, once again, that whole mindset of like, you're the one giving birth. So it's if we want to use the word responsibility, you're really the one feeling the baby grow to like spearhead all of this, but your partner just has to be willing to come along for the ride and learn.
Right. Well, I think it helped. I was kind of into it. So, yeah, learning a new thing is cool and exciting. So
I call him National Geographic Dan.
Yeah. It
was exciting for you.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, you said that to me last week. You were like, I got kind of excited when labor started. And it was especially exciting because it didn't last for forever. It was on the shorter side. So that's really what it is, was like, you spearhead it, and then you bring in your husband when you feel like, okay, he needs to hear this. Because he wasn't going to be sitting there Googling everything. How does he know? Like, I'm going to be the one that knows if it's like, this resonates, like, check this out. Well, someone asked if my HG went away, like, how soon after did your HG go away? So the answer is pretty much immediately. Like, the relief was super substantial, like right afterwards, done. I haven't thrown up since birth. The honest, like the super duper duper detailed honest answer is it did take a couple weeks for the random bouts of nausea to turn down, but it's almost not mentionable because, like, compared to before, like, I even told him, I'm like, I don't even really want to tell you this because it feels so lame, because it's so much better than before. But I would tell him occasionally, like, I'm feeling a little nauseous, particularly in the morning. But I think that might have been PTSD from, like, having 9 months of, like, my mornings being the worst. I would go to the kitchen and I'd be like, you're not going to throw up, Nikki. Just eat. And I would start eating, and then I couldn't stop eating. And I never felt nauseous. I never threw up. So that's the short answer, is it went away immediately. The super honest, detailed answer is it took a couple weeks for the nausea to keep turning the volume down. But, like, that almost feels dumb to mention because it was such, like, an immediately fixed problem. Like, just went away. Just like with Logan. My meal afterwards, I was like, yes.
I remember you saying, you felt better. You weren't obviously throwing up, not at all. You weren't mentioning that you were nauseous, but you were mentioning getting excited to eat. Like, you were getting hungry, but it wasn't like, yay, it's dinner time.
Yeah, no, I never had an appetite.
Let's go cook a meal. It was like, okay, before you had to feel like you had to force food down to not feel nauseous, but now you just had to find the motivation to eat.
Yes, now I can get an appetite. Yeah. Now I can get an appetite versus when I was sick, I never had one. It was just like, okay, I know I'm hungry because now I'm burping. And it's so gross to even get into details. It's like my stomach is empty, but I don't feel hungry. So now I can have more of an appetite. So yeah, that was probably too detailed, but also not, because you guys, it was 9 months of that. So thank you for asking. Someone asked if I've done anything differently afterwards this time for my healing journey. This might be the last question, because I'm thinking, like, I mean, someone did ask what your reaction was to finding out it was a girl. That's
you saw it.
Pretty cute. Yeah, they did see your reaction. We're pretty stoked, by the way, to have like one of each. It's so fun that we get to experience what our babies look like in each gender, especially because we don't know if we're going to have any more babies or not. So, I mean, I feel so basic bae saying this, but it is kind of cool that it's like, well, if God doesn't have more babies for us, it's kind of fun that we got one of each, you know? So I'm very excited. Side note, that's not a side note, about the fact that I have a little girl. It's tripping me out. I keep having moments where all of a sudden I'm like, I have a daughter. Like, crazy. Okay.
I'm really glad that we waited to find out.
I am too. Yeah. That was such a fun surprise. I told a friend yesterday that, you know, she was like, I really wanted to wait, but I couldn't. I'm too controlling. I had to know. And I was like, honestly, I feel that. I never, ever thought I would be someone to wait to find. I mean, I also never thought I'd be someone to have a home birth. I didn't even know if I was going to have kids for a long time, or at least biological children. But waiting to find out was super awesome. And part of the reason I was able to wait, I've said this before, I think was weirdly because of the miscarriage that I had about a year. Well, we're 2 years out now. That is so crazy. But something happened when I miscarried where I just was like, all right, nothing is guaranteed. And that might be really weird logic because nothing is guaranteed at any point. Like any of us could die at any point. But for some reason after that, it just became easier for me to be like, all right. He had always kind of thought it would be cool to wait. I never thought of that. I was like, no way. But then when, you know, this time around, I was like, all right, I'm willing to wait. And
well, if she wasn't willing to wait, I was going to wait. But that would have been weird. So torturous for you to have to keep a secret like that. I could
not have done, I wouldn't have wanted to do that either.
Right.
It would have been too like out of sync. No, not right. This person, you know, who asked if I've done anything differently, afterwards, all I'll say that really it's my body healing. So 2 weeks after I started pelvic floor therapy this time, and I'm going to be going into a pelvic floor therapist actually starting next week once I hit my 6-week mark. And I actually also start like traditional physical therapy next weekend as well. So right around my 7-week mark. And I was not this structured with my physical recovery last time with Logan. I worked my way into working out again, but I'm just way more like I have a plan that God willing, I can continue to execute, because you guys know I dislocated my knee like about a year and a half ago. And when you're pregnant and after you're pregnant, you have a lot of relaxin in your body. So I'm really not wanting to dislocate my knee or throw my back out. So yeah. Also, I started pumping earlier this time, like switching to exclusively pumping because my back was really feeling like I was going to throw it out. And with Logan at around the 9-month mark, I threw my back out for like 3 months. And I was like, no, if we can avoid this, we're not doing this time. So I switched to exclusively pumping about 2 weeks ago. So when Lizzie was about 3 weeks old. So yeah, those are the main things. I've also been taking lots of naps lately, but pretty much I'd say my physical workout plan and switching to exclusively pumping earlier are the 2 biggest things that I've done differently to help aid in my healing. So yeah, I just keep going. We just got to wrap this up because we'll just keep going. This has already been like forever. So yeah, I don't know. I'm really glad that you got our birth filmed, not only for us, obviously, but you guys saw my reaction when I'm in the birth zone, not really thinking about things being filmed. I don't even know that I would have we had a friend offer to come film for us. And I was like, you can't come, dude. I wish you could come. I wish I could have those beautiful birth photos, but like no one can be up in my space. And so it's really cool that you remembered to film because
I would have done something different. I would have, I just probably would have put the tripod in a different area or maybe been aware of where it was. And I wouldn't have been standing in the way for like the whole thing.
He made multiple comments. He's like, do you think anyone's going to say like, Dan, move your butt?
Or I can't see anything, move.
I actually thought that was kind of great and it was perfect. We just got cut off by the camera and now I don't remember what we were saying, but that's it. We're going to go now.
Memory card's full. Bye.
Memory card's full. No, I really don't remember what we had said, what we were saying. Oh, just about, it was the perfect amount. The video was perfect. It was exactly what it was supposed to be, especially for someone who didn't even know if she wanted to film it. Like, it was perfect. We got all of our memories, but, you know, I'm going crazy in the video anyways, so your butt covering me is a little good. So, yeah, I guess that's it, guys. I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful to God. I'm so grateful for you, grateful to our midwife, grateful to my doula, just all of it. So that's it. All right. Bye, guys.